Hello everyone. Thank you for joining my session. よいしょ。よいしょ。This session is in English, but we don't have a simultaneous Japanese interpretation. I'm sorry, but I couldn't prepare the material beforehand. すみません。このセッション英語でやるんですけど、事前に資料を作ることができなくて、昨日まで作ってたんで、日本語の同時通訳ないです。でも、ゆっくり喋るのと、あと、スライドは日本語も一緒に書いているので、安心して聞いてもらえるんじゃないかなと思ってます。よろしくお願いします。Okay. If you catch a cold, stay home and rest. This is the catchphrase of a cold medicine. It became a hot topic on the internet last year. Do you know why? It was because the advertisement recommending to take a break was a new style. Until then, we tended to take medicine to go to work. But recently, people are finally becoming to be able to say, if you don't feel well, please take a rest. In 2020, the year of this catchphrase, it's been a year of significant change, as we all know. I wanted to go to the venue today, but I decided to participate online from Osaka. I miss the bento box of RSGT. I'm sorry. I miss you all, folks. So, I'd like to talk with you on Twitter or Discord. Please mention me. Alright, let's begin. The title is Rethink Scrum from a Japanese cultural perspective. Jeff-san, who is a father of Scrum, said, Scrum has its roots in Japanese thought and practice. I had been thinking of considering it deeply as a person who grew up in the Japanese culture. Then I started thinking about it when my colleague asked me this question last year. What should I do even though we have no definition of tech lead? I was so much interested in his question. So please let me introduce myself here. I'm Mitz, a web application engineer. I like Java, Scrum, and DDD. And I've been working for Rakuten for more than 10 years, an internet service company from EC, fintech, to recently telecommunications. Please use it. I belong to ECID, EC Incubation Development Department. In ECID, we develop and operate big and small EC services such as Rakuma, Rakuten Online Pay, etc. We have more than 10 groups and 250 people in the department in total. And almost all the groups have started Scrum, and every group is struggling with it. For example, how to manage the team, how to work with other groups, and so on. Seeing such a situation, I established a group around 5 years ago named Kaizen Group to support them. Then I met him to support him to be a tech lead. It was the first time to work with someone who told me a lot of pure questions like this from a totally different perspective. And it required me a lot of energy because I had to put everything into words every day to answer his questions. Sometimes he appeared in my dream at night to ask more questions, kindly. It was a very precious time for me, honestly. While I gradually understood him, I also understood myself in Japanese culture, and it made me start thinking about our culture and Scrum. Then I came up with a question. Would Scrum look the same for him and me. Before we move on, I'd like to tell you that I will talk about the difference between Japanese culture and another culture today. And I don't mean to say it is good or it is bad at all. It is just we have differences. So I came up with this question. To think about this, I'd like to touch upon a paper, very famous paper, which is the origin of Scrum. It is the new product development game, published by Takeuchi-san and Nonaka-san in the Harvard Business Review in 1986. It has the word new twice in the title because it is about a new approach for new product development. The closing keynote speaker this year is, as Kawaguchi-san mentioned, Nonaka-san. I'm very much looking forward to his talk. And Jefferson created Scrum in 1993, influenced by this paper. And this paper, they reported that the most productive and innovative companies in the world had 6 characteristics. I won't go into detail today, but they are building instability and self-organizing project teams and overlapping development phases and multi-learning and subtle control and transfer of learning. We can find many elements reflected in the Scrum framework. In particular, we can see the following figure in the paper for the number 3, overlapping development phases. Type A is the top one is an example from NASA process. It is a relay race approach where expert groups pass the artifacts as a button to the next phase. And we can find phase overlaps in type B and C approaches. The B is Fuji-Xerox process, and the type C is Honda and Canon processes. Especially in type C, you can see that the first phase overlaps with the much later phases. They called this type C as a rugby approach. Scrum is exactly this type C approach. So from what kind of soil did this rugby approach come? The key to this is culture of the field. When we started working with people from overseas in Rakuten, I often heard the following story. A Japanese manager said, "A member from overseas only does what I told him." On the other hand, a member from overseas said, "Even though I did everything my manager told me, he doesn't seem satisfied. Why?" The cause of such misunderstanding wasn't due to individual personality, but to cultural differences. So I want to define 2 cultures today, focusing on what people prioritize when they gather to form a group. One is culture of the field, which we call ba in Japanese. Another is culture of the individual, which we call ko. Japan is the culture of the field that prioritizes the field. On the other hand, Europe and the US are the culture of the individual that prioritize the individual. The Japanese culture of the field requires the following skills: read expectations of others and act without being told what to do. For example, many Japanese parents raise this their children by saying, put yourself in the other person's shoes, or understand without being told, and think of others before yourself. In other words, we have to prioritize the field over the individual. This is the culture of the field. Here's a brief comparison of each culture. The culture of the field assumes unified values and ideas. And at the heart of the group's connection is empathy between people. And people put little in words and exchange knowledge implicitly. In contrast, the culture of the individual respects diverse values and ideas, and they place rules at the center of the connection because people respect the differences of each other. Also, they clearly state many things as explicit knowledge to form a group in such a diverse environment. Thinking from the perspective of this culture of the field, we can see why the Japanese manufacturing industry was so strong in the 80s. There are two main reasons. One is a firm culture of the field. We can see it well in the system of lifetime employment. Joining a company meant contributing to it for the rest of one's life. And when a company accepted an employee, it was welcomed that employee's life, including his or her family. Another reason was a clear goal. After World War II, Japan as a whole had a big, clear plan, catch up with and overtake Europe and the US. A firm field given a clear goal allows people to move as if the field has a will of its own. As a result, they could create a rugby-like approach. So now let's talk about Scrum. From the perspective of these cultures, how can we view Scrum? We can see it as follows. The rugby approach was born from the culture of the field, and Scrum standardized it so that the people in the culture of the individual could implement it. Here, we can see the answer to this question. It is no. Scrum exists in the middle between the field of the individual and the field and the individual. And to the person of the field side, it should appear, it looks like individual approach. And to the person of the individual, it should appear the field side approach. So Scrum looks different for each culture. I want to summarize this part. The origin of Scrum, the rugby approach, was born on the culture of the field. And Scrum is a framework that standardizes it for the culture of the individual. Therefore, we found out that the Scrum looks different for each culture. Then, a new question arises here. If the origin of Scrum is in the culture of the field, Japanese companies should be able to accept it naturally. But what about the reality? We are having a hard time. At least 10 years ago, when I joined Rakuten, the company wasn't ready to accept a development style like Scrum at all. Why was that? Next, I'd like to consider the reason. Okay. So part 2. Why is it so challenging to introduce Scrum in Japan? To find the answer, the book I picked up was this: Essence of Failure, 失敗の本質 in Japanese. This book analyzed why Japan lost in World War II from the organizational theory perspective. One of the authors is Nonaka-san again. I admit I'm a big fan of Nonaka-san. I read a lot of books of Nonaka-san this time, and everything was so nice. And every item written in the book is interesting, but I'd like to focus on the following 3 characteristics today. They are control by mood, hierarchical structure by seniority, and failure of unlearning. Let's check them one by one. The first one is control by mood. The mood is kind of atmosphere that no one can resist. Lazy-san said in his book that as a result of mood dominating the entire field, decisions that are never rational become a fact of life. At that time, the whole place is responsible for the decision, or in other words, no one is responsible for that. Earlier, I mentioned that we raise expectations and act accordingly in the culture of the field. This expectation in the field becomes mood. This mood often consists of humanity and the theory of spirits known as kamikaze spirit, rather than a rational principle and logic. That is because people form groups through human connections and empathy. When things are going well, the mood encourages rapid and flexible development. But once things go wrong, the mood starts to control the field. It takes worth away from the individual and generates peer pressure. For example, in the project, even though everyone thinks they should stop their project for a variety of reasons, the mood prevents them from saying that. As a result, the project often continues and faces many problems as everyone predicted. It often happens. Also, this mood has an aspect to focus on the process rather than the outcome. It is very easy to imagine in Japan that those who work overtime are evaluated more because of the hard work than those who work efficiently and live on time, even though the outcomes are same. In this way, the mood, or should I say, atmosphere, dominates the field, controls the field, and pushes decisions forward that are not rational. This is controlled by mood. Next is about hierarchical structure by seniority. We can see strong hierarchical structure in Japanese organizations, and the hierarchy is based on seniority. If you are in an industry where seniority is proportional to skills, it may work well. However, in the software industry, seniority can't be the primary indicator. Changes occur in short cycle frequently, and people need to update their knowledge and skills continuously. And younger people may be more knowledgeable about new technologies. In such an industry, it is necessary to use competency-based evaluation standards rather than a seniority-based system. However, as you can imagine, it is very hard to replace people according to their abilities, since the hierarchical structure consists of people-to-people connections and seniority right now. This structure makes it impossible to utilize the talents of highly skilled people. Moreover, sometimes an underskilled person in the upper level may bring disadvantages to the organization to defend its position. The last one is failure of unlearning. Japanese organizations are good at building improvements step by step on top of current knowledge base, learned from past experiences. History has proved that step-by-step improvement is very good fit to Japan. But sometimes we have to take a different approach. When we find gaps between current knowledge and reality due to a new change in the environment, we need to doubt the current knowledge and acquire new knowledge with unlearning. We are not good at this self-denying learning through unlearning. Let's say we decide to use the waterfall model that had been successful in the construction industry. Even if it doesn't fit the software industry and the results are therefore not good, we wouldn't accept that reality and we wouldn't doubt our existing knowledge. So we couldn't work on new development methods. It means such an organization is unable to self-organize in response to environmental changes. It is still common today, or rather, this is the biggest obstacle to the introduction of Scrum. Now, I have focused on 3 points from Essence of Failure. I want to call them organizational suffocation here. I mean, in a seniority-based hierarchical structure where mood controls, it isn't easy to move away from the current way and work on better ways of doing things. Due to this organizational suffocation, it is so hard to introduce Scrum in Japan. Honestly, I saw many of these characteristics in Rakuten 10 years ago when I first joined the company, such as there was a mood where we couldn't mention that development was behind schedule. Or some people asked the year of joining the company when they meet a person. Then they changed their attitude accordingly. And some groups tended to resist to challenge something new that has no precedent, and so on. It was a hard time. However, this situation had changed all at once because of a declaration made by Mikitani-san, who is our CEO. He felt we had no future if we kept staying there. Then he made a big announcement. It was to change the official language of the company from Japanese to English. We have coined the term Englishization in the company. Many people, both internally and externally, criticized this direction so much. And it caused actually lots of confusion within the company. Still, thanks to that, we could escape from the organizational suffocation in the end. Changing the official language meant more than just speaking a different language. It meant a cultural change embedded in the languages. For example, in Japanese, we naturally select different words depending on the relationship with the other person or the situation. As a result, a hierarchical structure appears naturally. Also, it has euphemisms to avoid direct expressions, which creates a mood. In contrast, English is a flat language for the low context culture, reflecting the culture of the individual. Using email as an example, even though we need to write 10 or 20 lines if we use Japanese, it would be only 2 lines or 3 lines in English to tell the same contents. Until then, while we said globalization, let's globalize, etc., the Japanese language had stopped it after all. With the official language becoming English, foreign culture had finally come into play, and we could exit from the organizational suffocation. On top of that, I'd like to introduce a few things that our department is currently working on. It is about horizontal connections. Nakane-san said that one of the Japanese organization's characteristics is that they are not good at horizontal connections beyond the groups. I think this is true. To solve the issue, the managers introduced activities to connect the group members horizontally. A committee system that brings together people with the same interests, the cross-group mentoring system, and a committee of group managers. I like the managers community, though I'm not a member of it. In the past, group managers worked separately, and they seemed lonely to handle the organization. However, they started the community to support each other and discuss how to improve the organization and so on. I've always thought this system was a good idea. And when I read a book written by today's keynote speaker, Zuji-san, the great Scrum Master, I understood our managers are the great Scrum Masters for the organization. So that's the reason I liked it. If you are interested in our department atmosphere, please join Kunimoto-san's sponsor session after this session from 11 a.m. I don't know the room, but please check it. And Kinugawa-san's workshop with Rochelle-san from 1 p.m. today. They are my managers. And it should be great. And please let me summarize part 2. We found that when we work on Scrum in the culture of the field, we need to escape from the organizational suffocation. Then I have introduced as an example Rakuten's shift to English. I'm sure many companies working on Scrum in Japan also have overcome this organizational suffocation characteristics in various ways. Now, I have noticed something. That is, we are in the middle of transition from the field to the individual. With that in mind, I can see why leaders in the company are worrying right now. That is because we are in the mixed culture of the field and the individual. We can't find the answer in the past because it is a new place. So then, what kind of leadership should we show in this situation? It is the challenge we are currently facing. So as a final topic, let's think about leadership in Scrum. The leaders in Scrum are the product owner and the Scrum Master. And as you may know, in Scrum Guide 2020, the Scrum Master description has been changed from servant leaders to leaders who serve. I think it's a small word change, but a great change that they emphasize the aspect of accountable leaders more. And by the way, there is one thing that is still unclear to me. That is, who is accountable for the technical decisions and the quality of the deliverables? That is the question. It wouldn't be so easy for product owners and Scrum Masters to go into technical details. On the other hand, it would be difficult for all developers to share the responsibility for the same reason as the product owner isn't a committee. In the new revision, the Scrum Master is now the true leader, so the Scrum Master's role may include it, but in my opinion, we need a tech lead as a role. I don't have the answer yet. That aside, Jefferson had the following to say about the relationship between Toyota's chief engineer and Scrum leader roles. I read it. I wanted that in Scrum, but I'm also well aware that very few people have the level of skills and experience. So I split the role into two, giving the Scrum Master the how and the product owner the what. I'm now interested in what is the role of the chief engineer at Toyota. The chief engineer, this is the sentence from the book Actual Toyota Chief Engineer wrote. The chief engineer oversees all the processes from the vehicle concept, the looks, the design and evaluation, and production, sales, quality assurance, to the service, everything related to the car. Toyota is famous for its Toyota production system, which focuses on the production part of how to produce. In contrast, the chief engineer plays a central role in the product development part of what to develop. In terms of software development, we have little production part. So this product development part is the core part for us. What's outstanding about the chief engineer is that it is the product owner and Scrum Master. This is already tough, and leaves everything else related to the product by itself. This is great, and it requires very high skill level, so it is no wonder that it needs more than 20 years of experience in Toyota. Now, let's think about the chief engineer and the culture of the field. Can anyone be chief engineer if they have the engineering skills? I think the answer is no. Naturally, chief engineer have to have high technical skills and enough experience. But in addition to that, they need to have the ability to create and control empathy. That is because a chief engineer needs to stand on the firm culture of the field and maximize the power of the field. With this empathy, the entire field, from the family to the company, becomes a community of destiny and can move forward to the goal of creating the best product possible. Then, can we apply this chief engineer system, introduce this to the current Japanese software industry? It is also no, I don't think so. As we saw earlier, the current software industry is in a mixed culture of the field and the individual. In such a situation, it is hard for leadership to utilize the maximum power of the field. So, what should we do? The clue to this is, I think, Scrum. That is because Scrum exists in the middle of the cultures of the field and the individual. Jefferson found the answer from the individual viewpoint. It was to divide the role into the product owner and the Scrum Master. I think that is a great idea that I really respect his idea. Then, are there any ideas we can add from the culture of the field perspective? So here, I'd like to think about the CE field. We expect the same role to the CE field as chief engineer, but it is shared by each leader. When I look back to the teams I have been involved with over the past 10 years, I can think of them as having created this CE field with the product owner at the center. The business leader leads the business team, the director leads the UI UX, and the tech lead for development team and Scrum Master entire process and Kaizen, and the organizational managers leads the organization. In that CE field, everyone has product ownership and brings their opinions as a representative of each team. But the product owner is the only one who can make decisions, and it must convince each leader with his idea or her idea. Everyone understands the expectation there in the field, but we can keep the role boundaries fuzzy because our foundation or root is the culture of the field. Therefore, we can support each other beyond the roles and maximize outcomes of the field, helping each other. In this way, I believe the community of leaders can work as if they are one chief engineer as a whole, helping each other, supporting each other. And it will be a form of development style for the future in the mixed culture of the field and the individual. Okay. In summary, in this session, we rethought Scrum from a perspective of Japanese culture. First, I introduced the origin of Scrum and its relationship to the culture of the field. Then, we looked into organizational suffocation, which we need to exit, and how to escape from it. and introducing the case of Rakuten as an example. Finally, we rethought the Scrum leadership from the culture of the field perspective, and I shared my idea. Like the catchphrase for cold medicine that I mentioned initially, Japanese culture is gradually changing from the field to the individual. It is nice that the individual is becoming more valued with this change. However, we can't wholly transform Japanese culture into the individual culture because we root on the soil of the culture of the field. Therefore, our next challenge will be to utilize the strengths of the field nature while incorporating the individual, something like a CE field. So Scrum will play a central role because it exists between the two cultures. And with the Scrum at the center, we seek new forms from both sides, stimulating each other to exchange and discover and create knowledge and gather all our intelligence into the Scrum. By doing so, I believe that we will be able to maximize individual abilities, as Jeff-san said, in the field while respecting the individual. So last but not least, let's form a Scrum with the culture of the field and the culture of the individual to find the new product development game. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. ありがとうございます。I'm on Discord or Twitter, so please feel free to talk to me. I'm really glad and to hear. I'm really glad if you could kindly share your ideas. Japanese is also, of course, okay. ありがとうございました。じゃあ、どうなのかな？終わりかな？
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございます。Thank you.
Thank you for presentation. Any question? Any comment?
いいかな。I will upload this slide later and we'll post on Twitter and Discord.
めっちゃ面白かったです。
ありがとうございます。よかった。よかったです。
アイディアがすごい入ってて、すごいなんかワクワクして聞いてました。
あ、よかった。平野さん、そんな言って。
いや、特にその、なんか、
はい、
フィールドのカルチャーから何かスクラムに提案できないかっていうのは僕もずっとそういうふうに思っていて、生まれたものなんだけど、そのアメリカのカルチャーというと変ですけど、スタンダード化されていくっていうこと自体が実行はしやすくなるけど、それが逆に日本に元に来たときに、なんかすごいコンフリクトを僕も感じていて、でそれをうまくこう表現できないかなと思ってたんですけど、なんかズバッと言ってくれたんですごくなんかワクワクしました。
ありがとうございます。いや、本当にそれがなんか伝えたかったことなので、伝わってよかったです。なんかそうなんですよね。そのスタンダード化っていうか、その形式値化をするのが得意でっていうか、それでちゃんと仕組みとしてできて、それが戻ってきて、じゃあ僕たち何ができるんだろうなっていうのを考えたかったところ、今考えているところなので、なんかその辺でちょっとでもこう、みんなもそう考えるきっかけになるといいなと思います。ありがとうございます。じゃあそろそろ時間なので、please send me any questions anytime. That's all. It's time. Thank you very much.